những vấn đề thiết thực. Chuỗi chia sẻ chân tình. Kết nối bí quyết để thành công.
Chia sẻ bài học kinh nghiệm, cởi mở và chân tình.
Đón xem Chia sẻ để thành công, phát sóng lúc 21h30 đến 22 giờ tối thứ ba tuần cuối cùng mỗi tháng. Mạng cộng đồng doanh nhân Alphabet, kết nối cơ hội kiến tạo thành công.
Chào mừng quý vị đến với Chia sẻ để thành công, chuỗi trò chuyện với các lãnh đạo và chuyên gia hàng đầu xoay quanh những vấn đề quản trị và kinh doanh thiết thực nhất. Ngày nay, để các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam có thể cạnh tranh tốt hơn trên nền kinh tế hội nhập, thì bộ phận phải thay đổi quan trọng đầu tiên có lẽ là phòng nhân sự, bởi vì những chiến lược con người là chìa khóa thành công của tất cả các chiến lược quan trọng khác. Để tìm hiểu về vai trò của nhân sự hiện đại cũng như những kỹ năng để nhân sự có thể đóng góp cho doanh nghiệp hơn ở tầm chiến lược, Chia sẻ để thành công xin kết nối quý vị với hai khách mời đặc biệt. Ông Captain Bringer, CEO của Vietnam Work, và ông Andy Lopata là chiến dịch gia hàng đầu châu Âu về nghệ thuật xây dựng quan hệ. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We always say people is the most important access of any business, but traditionally HR, the department in charge of all human resources, still considered as a supporting function. So why is that, Mr. Cotton?
I think this is largely for traditional reasons. If you think of the traditional model of a company, we tend to divide it up into revenue centers and cost centers.
Okay.
Where the revenue center is where the income comes in for your products and your services, and the cost centers are departments like your HR and your IT.
Yes.
And I think that division is really more for financial management reasons and doesn't really speak to the importance of the different departments.
How you see HR is different with other supporting functions like ITs or purchasing?
Well, I think there is one defining characteristic of the HR department, and that is that there tends to be a delay factor.
Okay.
Now, let me explain what I mean by that. If you are a business and you buy a particular piece of machinery, that machinery, you install it, you turn it on,
It's run right away.
and it runs right away.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas with people, there tends to be a bit of a delay factor. There's a learning curve. It takes time for them to get up to speed.
That means that all the HR strategy and planning needs to be one step ahead of other departments.
That's right. There's a need for the HR to be more proactive and to be that little bit more in advance of the needs of the business so that the people can be there and ready and up to speed in time.
However, I think in reality, the current HR department in Vietnam is not operating at that optimal level, because we just have a survey that is conducted by the business communities alphabet.com with more than 1,000 people responding to that survey, and it shows that more than half of the respondents still share that the biggest role of the HR department at their company is still admin tasks. And then following the request from other functions just to do different HR activities. Only about 13.4% of them agree that they consider HR as like the strategic advisors who can give relevant HR advice. So as one of the biggest HR company, how do you see of this fact?
I think we see a similar trend.
Okay.
We have more than 8,000 clients.
Okay.
Big companies and small companies. And our consultants are often in dialogue with those companies. And one of the big problems really is planning ahead for the needs of the HR department. And the HR departments tend to be on the passive side. Now let me explain what I mean by that. Typically, if we would ask them, well, what's your plan for the next 12 months? They might say, well, I might need these few people, but really, I don't know.
They don't know it yet.
Because I don't know who's going to leave, for example.
Or my boss haven't told me to recruit that person yet.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're being reactive. But we do see a change. We do see more of our customers becoming more active.
Okay.
We encourage them to plan in advance as well. That seems to be happening.
Okay, so we trying to understand on what is the barrier that limit HR from being play as a strategic role, Andy, and then we found something very interesting that also the same survey revealed that the biggest reason is not because of lack of HR expertise. They do have a lot of good HR expertise, but what they lack is the lack of the understanding of the others' functions, works, and requirement. That's why it's difficult for them to give the good advice. And then when we look into the more detail, we see a lot of blaming between HR and other function. For example, to HR, they think the CEO is not empowering me enough, or the other function is not supporting me enough. Why the other functions see that HR is not enough caring? So how does that tell you about the relationship between HR and other function?
I think there's a couple of things there. The first is that you've got something of the silo mentality, and by silo mentality, I mean that everyone works to their own department, and they work to their own goals, and they don't see themselves as part of the same company. They see themselves as just looking at their own objectives and their own achievements. And I think you have to have a shift into understanding what the end result is, what the outcome is, and how it affects everyone. Now, the relationship in those figures show that's clearly not there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's related, it's very much related. There's not been time invested in relationships. So there's a lack of mutual understanding. There's a lack of mutual respect, I think you could say, and certainly a lack of communication. Above everything, it's just a lack of taking the time to see things from the other department's perspective. And to be fair, that's a two-way thing. You know, I think that other departments will see HR in a negative way a lot of the time, without thinking about why HR do what they do. But then again, if you're an HR director or HR manager, whose responsibility is it to change that and change that attitude?
So with that, let's say that kind of relationship, the internal relationship is not that strong and positive. How does that, in your views, could impact to the quality of the HR performance?
Well, if they're not working together as one team, if you've got essentially competition rather than collaboration, then you're not going to get the same results. You're not going to get effective results. At the moment, I think you can look at the HR role and categorise it in three ways. And to be honest, they're not the most attractive categorisations. But you have, for example, the policeman. So the office police are there to make sure discipline is in place, to make sure people aren't absent, or they've got an excuse for absences.
Oh, yeah, I see, yeah.
They keep people in line. Now, immediately you can see if that's your primary role, how are you going to build trust, you know, between yourself and your colleagues? And maybe colleagues isn't a word that HR... the second one, which again, I mean, if you're an HR person, this can't be fun, but you become what I call the problem dustbin. So if someone has a problem, they come to you. And normally, it's too late to do anything about it. So you're only dealing with a negative overspill, if you like.
Only when before I quit, I go to HR, right?
Before I quit, my boss is harassing me, you know, anything along those lines. If someone wants to quit, by the time they come to you, it's too late. So again, where's the job satisfaction in that? And where's the relationship building that you get from enjoying what you do? And then the third area, which is another very popular area, is the executor. So you're told what to do. Make these redundancies, fire those people, you know, discipline that person. And I know a lot of HR people get very frustrated because they're sitting in front of people and they're having to fire them or make them redundant or discipline them and justify that. They might not agree, they might not understand, but that's their job. So yeah, you have to shift that.
That sounds horrible the way you use the word, but then how, to which role should a policeman or the problem dustbin or the executor should turn into?
Well, you start by, you want to look for more positive roles. You want roles that are based on cooperation and working closely with colleagues. And you want roles that are based around being supportive. And one of my main concerns here is that makes the job of the HR manager, the job of the HR team so much more fulfilling and enjoyable. So, taking those three areas, instead of being the policeman and saying, you shouldn't do that, you're in trouble, you become the mentor. You support people, you coach people, you help them improve their performance. And if there are certain things that they have to do, you work with them so that they take ownership of the reasons for that and they understand it. If you take the problem dustbin, why not become the problem solver?
Yeah.
Not necessarily coming up with the answers, but helping people find the answers. And part of that is encouraging people to come to you earlier in the process because they see you as someone who wants to help and support them rather than the person who helps fill out the dotted lines. So it's a shift in role again. And the third one, instead of being the executor, being told what to do and then just doing it, become a strategic partner within the business so that people are including you in those conversations. If you have redundancies to make or costs to save, before you decide on redundancies, they consult with HR and say, how do we approach this in the best way? You might know where you can make other savings and save jobs. And that, again, has got to be more satisfying.
Chúng ta cũng thấy rằng chất lượng của những mối quan hệ nội bộ có ảnh hưởng trực tiếp đến việc phòng nhân sự có thể tác động đến toàn bộ các phòng ban khác trong tổ chức như thế nào. Làm thế nào để xây dựng những mối quan hệ nội bộ tích cực hơn. Chương trình sẽ quay trở lại với phần 2 sau ít phút.
Mạng cộng đồng doanh nhân Alphabet kết nối cơ hội kiến tạo thành công.
Chào mừng quý vị quay trở lại với Chia sẻ để thành công. Thưa quý vị, chương trình đã làm một phóng sự ngắn để tìm hiểu xem phòng nhân sự gặp những khó khăn gì trong việc đóng góp nhiều hơn cho tổ chức ở mức độ chiến lược. Xin mời quý vị và hai dẫn giả cùng xem.
Trong vai trò tuyển dụng thì hiện nay là trong công ty của chị thì không có được đánh giá cao cho lắm. Tất cả các đa số là tụi chị phỏng vấn rồi bên technical bộ phận department head của họ sẽ quyết định như thế nào, rồi mình là người chỉ là 30% đóng góp trong đó và làm những công việc ví dụ như make offer như thế nào, rồi thương lượng lương bổng ra sao, cái đó là cái chủ yếu. Chứ còn về phần technical thì mình lại không có được tham gia nhiều vì họ cho rằng mình cũng chưa biết và mình không được quyết định về vấn đề đó.
Các phòng ban thì thường hay nhìn phòng nhân sự như là người gác cửa, hay là có những cái problem gọi là giải quyết vấn đề cho các phòng ban đó. Ví dụ như khi có cái sự cố gì thì các trưởng phòng thường phải chạy tới nhân sự để get cái advice, hoặc là họ thường muốn là nhân sự phải đưa ra giải pháp cho họ chứ họ không có tự nghĩ ra. Thì thông thường cái đó nó sẽ làm cho cái vai trò của nhân sự trở thành cái người chỉ có là biết thụ động thôi, chứ mình không có proactive, mình không có chủ động trong cái việc mà cung cấp giải pháp đó cho họ một cách lâu dài.
Mình là trưởng phòng marketing của trong công ty, cho nên mình nghĩ rằng nhân sự cũng cần tham gia những hoạt động của các phòng ban khác để hiểu rõ thêm về chuyên môn cũng như tính chất cái công việc cụ thể của từng phòng ban. Lúc đó mình mới có thể hỗ trợ được họ cần thiết trong những cái khó khăn hoặc là những cái thành tựu của họ trong công việc, thì lúc đó nhân sự mới trở nên hiệu quả hơn được.
Ban lãnh đạo khi mà đã có phòng nhân sự thì phải tuyệt đối tin tưởng vào phòng nhân sự là làm được việc gì. Khi chúng ta tin thì chúng ta mới làm việc được, còn nếu không tin mà làm việc mà phải theo dõi hay là phải đưa ra một cái ý tưởng mà chỉ một nửa vời thì việc đó phòng nhân sự sẽ rất khó trong tất cả các hoạt động liên quan đến nhân lực. Tại khi mình đưa ra một quyết định thì nó phải chắc chắn, chứ không thể nào mình đưa ra một quyết định chỉ để xem xét và thăm dò, thì như vậy nó sẽ không hiệu quả. Mà cái sự tin tưởng, giao phó và có quyền từ ban giám đốc giao cho bên phòng nhân sự, đó là điều quan trọng quyết định nhân sự thành công.
Ở công ty thì nhiều lúc người lãnh đạo chưa cái đặt hết niềm tin vào cái bộ phận nhân sự, bởi vì một cái điều quan trọng nhất là sự thấu hiểu về tâm lý và sự đắc nhân tâm của hành chánh nhân sự của công ty. Và nếu mà cái phòng nhân sự mà thấm nhuần hiểu được những cái chuyện đó và có cách xử lý cho những nhân sự có những cái tính cách khác nhau giữa trong công ty. Thì nếu làm được điều đó thì nhà lãnh đạo cũng sẽ trao những cái niềm tin. Còn thấy nếu mà không đạt được điều đó thì nhà lãnh đạo phải tự bản thân mình quyết định.
Andy, when you listen to all this difficulty that the HR professional is having with the internal relationship, what top of my solution come to you?
I think that the first thing I would say is that there needs to be more support and there needs to be stronger relationships. If you build those relationships, the relationships between the HR team and their management, the HR management and other senior members of the management team, the other heads of other business functions, and between the heads of HR and the board of directors, you can get a two-way conversation and suddenly HR feel like part of the company. I get the feeling that's not always the case.
Okay.
So it's that relationship between the different functions that makes a difference.
So if I was an HR manager and I would asking you for more advice, then how should I do to improve the quality of my relationship to the other partner that you just described to make it more positive?
Well,
and supportive.
Well, there's a few things you can do, and it's something where it can be very much on an individual level. So if you know the key people that you need to have around you, let's call them your dream team. Okay. So if we take the HR as a business partner model, and say you're the HR partner for sales, who do you need the strong relationships with? That's where I would start off. So it may well be, well,
sales directors, of course.
Well, sales directors, sales managers, the key players in the sales team. But also, you know, we need to think creatively at times, not just the obvious. So what about key clients that your sales team have a regular interaction with?
Oh,
if you know if you know what they're thinking, then you can be more of an advisor, a strategic partner to the sales team. So build relationships with them as well. But it also expands to people around the office because you never know where people are going to go and where the influencers are. So I think that there are a number of touch points, times in people's interaction with the company when you can just do little things to build a relationship.
You mentioned something like the touch point. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yes, of course. A few examples. I mean, I think the key thing is that each of these touch points becomes natural and not part of your role. So the first touch point might be someone first joins the company. But wouldn't it be nice if instead you sat down when they first joined, just introduced yourself and just found out a little bit about them? You know, where have they come from? What were they doing before? Why have they changed? What are their hopes? What are their aspirations? What do they want to achieve within the organisation? That's an obvious touch point.
Yeah, much nicer.
It's an easier thing to do, but we don't do it. When people achieve something within the company, you know, if you hear that a member of the sales team has exceeded their target early in the year, congratulate them.
Usually that's the job of the CEO, but hardly we see HR do that. Congratulations.
But it's not about it being your job.
Yes,
it's about a
human
and natural human interaction. It's the same with birthdays. You know, do you do something as a process, which to me, if everyone receives a card on their birthday and it's signed without any comment, I don't think there's any real value in that. But if you walk past someone in the corridor and stop them and say, hey, it's your birthday today, isn't it? Happy birthday. That's a genuine human interaction. There's lots of touch points like that, but that's some examples. I think the key point is that it's natural and it's human, and that's the interaction.
So the reason that we can have Andy flying from UK for this interview is because Cotton has invited you for a special trainings on networking skill, especially for HR people. So, Cotton, why you think that better networking skill could have HR to be better at their job?
Well, I think that's best illustrated with a story.
Okay.
In our company, in Vietnam Works, we have a small HR department, small and young, but they're quite dynamic.
Okay.
And we decided to call, a long time ago, all of our employees dream makers.
Dream maker?
Dream makers.
Okay. Because?
And that's because of our mission.
Okay.
Our mission is to help people to achieve their dream job.
That's a nice way.
So to help people to
Okay.
achieve dreams.
Okay, I see.
If you're a company looking to build your dream company, we can help you to find the right talent to help you to build
Okay.
up your dream. Now, our HR department was very proactive and called themselves Dream Maker Care.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Yeah.
And but it was a small change. But in terms of what happened after that, with employee engagement, and also with the change in culture, and we noticed in this that it was networking skills that were the really important element that were really helping for the two departments, the different department, the company and the HR department to really.
Wow, okay, that's
mix
a
together.
great example.
So that's why we invited Andy.
Okay, then Andy, as a networking strategist, can you have to explain more then in your definition, what is networking?
It's not about events, it's not about sites, networking sites, it's about networks. And networks are, you are surrounded by people who you know, like and trust. People with whom you forge strong, positive, long-lasting relationships. And those people have a diverse range of experience, expertise, a different way of looking at things, and contacts that can all help each other. So we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And if we combine those strengths, we can help overcome the weaknesses.
Yeah.
So it's collaboration, it's sharing. It means that you can help me achieve something better and I can help you achieve something better by trading what we bring to the table. And through that, then each of us can achieve more individually than we could if we did, than we tried to do things on our own.
So the key word would be like building relationship. So it doesn't matter if it's outside the company, but in this case, very important that inside the company that we have a positive and long-lasting network of relationship, right? And then, how good a network, the internal network, can help HR to become the better role as the strategic advisors, as we just said earlier?
Well, there's a number of different ways you can look at it. The first thing is that network can help HR better understand where they need to advise.
Okay,
If you can build a strong, trusted network of people who will be honest with you, who will be open, who will give you feedback on what's happening within the business, then you can start to really get inside the mind of different functions. You mentioned the survey earlier, and you said that the biggest barrier that was perceived by other functions was HR's lack of knowledge of how other functions work. So why not build a network who will tell you what they're doing? Why not take off your HR hat for a day and follow the finance team around and learn what they're doing? Which, if you've got the relationship with them, you can do in a way where it's trusted and it's not seen as a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Not seen as something where you're spying on them. I try to put that in a very sensitive way. The East London room nearly came out.
No, agree, because in Vietnam, a lot of people tell me that whenever HR set a meeting with them, they feel so worried, like, what HR is trying to check on me, maybe something wrong with me. So it seemed quite negative that way. Yeah,
and you need to build strong relationships and mutual trust that we've talked about time and again in this interview to overcome that suspicion. And one of the ways you can do that is just to be open and honest. This is what I want to achieve. But again, going back to something I said earlier, you can't just go into work tomorrow and say, right, I'm going to be your strategic partner, I'm going to advise you. You need to earn the right to share that honesty. And you also need to know where the knowledge gaps are. So that you can then ask the right questions of your network to find out how you can plug them.
I think it's maybe also helpful for HR to understand based on which criteria that other function could evaluate them on the strategic value. Then what could that be, Captain?
Well, I think after working in business for 20 years, 11 years in Vietnam, I think I would expect three things from my HR department, from a strategic HR department. First of all, I want them to understand more about my business. I want them to understand what my objectives are. What are my challenges in my business? What's the big picture of what I'm trying to achieve? I'm not just talking about the people elements here. I'm talking about the overall bigger goals. What's the big goals that we've set and how are we going to do it? And for them to really understand that. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm looking for is for them to be able to help me by writing proactive, strategic plans that will help me to achieve those goals. And not just reacting to, oh, this guy's left, I need to replace him. The third thing is more of a traditional view that I still expect from my HR department, which is that they are there to advise me, to help me, to sharpen my thinking about how I'm looking at my HR issues and my HR problems, you know, and really kind of really having good people judgment as well.
How about you, Andy?
Well, I think it's really important for the HR department to understand the importance of the perception the other functions have of them. Not to be complacent and think, well, we're doing this, why don't they understand it? But to get inside the minds of the other functions within the business and see their view of HR.
Chúng ta đã được chia sẻ khá nhiều bí quyết để có được những mối quan hệ tích cực hơn cho nhân sự. Còn các phòng ban khác thì sao? Chương trình sẽ quay trở lại với phần 3 sau ít phút.
Mạng cộng đồng doanh nhân Alphabet, kết nối cơ hội, kiến tạo thành công.
Chào mừng quý vị quay trở lại với Chia sẻ để thành công. So we just talk about that HRs really need to be good at networking skill in order to improve the internal relationship. So how about the other function? In an organization, like, who would need networking skill the most?
Well, we've already talked about you know, the fact that it's a two-way process. So, you know, if HR are trying to network and build relationships, but they're met with people who aren't interested, then it's very hard to do. So, in short, the answer is everybody. You know, the sales and marketing teams may well be the most obvious people that need to network, particularly externally. But then I would argue that the procurement team, the people who do the buying, need to network effectively to get the best deals and to get suppliers who will go the extra length to help them. So, you know, networking in every role. If the finance team need to implement budget cuts or get people's support, then they need to have the relationships to network. It goes across everyone in the organisation.
Then networking skill is inborn or can be trained, in your views?
There are people who are known as natural networkers. So they naturally like to talk to people, they naturally engage, they naturally show an interest in other people. But having said that, we're extrovert, we're not necessarily the best networkers because we're so involved in talking and so enthusiastic about talking about ourselves, we don't necessarily stop and listen.
Okay.
So if you're shy, if you're quiet, that probably means you're more considered, more thoughtful, and that means you listen to people more. And a lot of what I've talked about is the power of understanding other people's perspective in order to build relationships. Well, if you're quiet and shy, you're more likely to do that than an extrovert like me. So is it inborn? It can be. Can it be trained? Well, I hope so, because otherwise I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah, great. I'd like to add to what Andy said there. I think some people in some professions are more natural networkers. HR tends to attract the natural networking people. And I think it's interesting that really good HR people with networking training can become great at HR. Great at HR. You know, and that's our objective in bringing you here today.
They're natural people, if I can say that.
Yeah, can even better with the right training.
With the right training.
Then I have a question for you, Cotton. And in one of the interviews, you have said that the change in the strategic relationship between HR and other function could significantly result into the positive change of the business.
Right.
So it seems like a lot of responsibilities on HR. How about the other side? What is their role in that relationship changing?
Okay, I think first of all, it's the CEO who sets the tone for this.
How?
Really the CEO has to have the vision. He has to have the vision of what he expects and what he wants from his HR department. And that idea of wanting the department to be more strategic starts the whole process. And then the CEO needs to engage his other managers who are managing the other departments in the same process.
Yeah.
In really having the strategic vision for each of their departments and then actively communicating that with the HR department and encouraging the different managers and the people in these different departments to reach out to AR. Remember, we're talking about this being a two-way relationship.
Yes.
Not just HR coming to the different departments, but the departments also reaching across to HR. You know, and then expecting more from your HR people, so that there's much more contribution.
What would be your last advice for our audience if they want to improve their efficiency through having the better and more positive internal relationship?
Well, I think whether you're in HR or sales, whether you're the CEO or you're the manager in a company, you all have internal clients.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So networking skills are important. And good luck and happy networking.
Thank you. And Andy?
But I would say the number one thing is invest time and be patient. You know, time is the scarcest resource we have. And for me to just sit here and say, you've got to invest time in building relationships, well, it's easy to say, well, I'm busy. I've got my job to perform. How can I find the extra time? But you have to see both sides of the time equation. Yes, you might invest extra time in getting to know your colleagues better, in building stronger relationships with them, in getting to see things from their point of view, because you've got that trust in place.
Right.
But once that's there, you'll save time. You'll perform your tasks more efficiently, and you'll also find it more enjoyable because you'll have a more productive, proactive, to use one of Colton's words, and positive working relationship, and surely that's worth the investment up front. But you've got to invest in the time first.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thưa quý vị, nghệ thuật xây dựng quan hệ không chỉ giúp cho các doanh nghiệp hỗ trợ các khách hàng của mình tốt hơn, mà còn giúp cho các chuyên gia nhân sự phục vụ các khách hàng nội bộ của mình tốt hơn và đóng góp cho doanh nghiệp ở góc độ chiến lược hơn. Hy vọng chương trình đã mang lại cho quý vị những thông tin bổ ích. Một lần nữa xin cảm ơn hai diễn giả. Thank you very much, Mr. Cotton and Mr. Andy, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Wish you a very good success and happiness. Xin cảm ơn quý vị đã chú ý theo dõi chương trình và hẹn gặp lại để cùng chia sẻ để thành công trong những chương trình sau.
Mạng cộng đồng doanh nhân Alphabet, kết nối cơ hội kiến tạo thành công.